Peace. Peace, peace, peace. 1 o'clock. Greetings, everyone. Snuck up on me. 1 o'clock snuck up on me. But greetings, everyone. We're here again with another community show. I'm Chief Yuya, and we're just getting everything started, getting everything underway. It's always so different now that I don't have my countdown from Blog Talk Radio. So when the shows start, I'm like, did we really start? Is it official? If I don't hear, the Blog Talk Radio lady say we started, I kind of feel like I didn't start. So give me a second. I'm just kind of, getting into position, and I was lighting up my incense and everything like that, and getting us into space, into the right space, I should say. Yeah, getting us into the right headspace. But welcome, everyone. I guess we are started because I see people piling in and on the YouTube and stuff. So I guess we on. I think I'm gonna have to record my own count in, so I'll feel like, okay, now the show's officially starting. I miss my Blog Talk Radio digital concubine. But yeah, in any event, here we are, right? And just give me a second. I'm adjusting something. Yeah, we were having I think a good follow-up discussion yesterday, following up from Sunday's discussion revolving around family and definitely different ways to construct a family, some of the things one might do who has aspirations towards family and aspirations to do something of value in terms of that endeavor. And I got a lot of, I need my background music here. There we go. Now I feel I can relax on my bed of background music. There we go. Now I feel comfortable. But yeah, we had some good talks surrounding, just those who endeavor to want to have things like a family, and maybe some of the things that you may have not looked into that you might want to consider and think about. It was very interesting yesterday because my youth, a lot of times when we're doing the segments, they sit in, they like to, now that they're getting a little older and they're seeing a lot of the things play out in terms of what I've been, I want to say teaching. I don't know if they would call it teaching them all this time. Maybe they would say lecturing them on all these years. Now they've developed definitely a much greater interest in the very information that you all are learning, beyond the basics of being able to help out in the shrine and things like that. So a lot of times they will sit in when I'm doing these sessions and just kind of listen, or sometimes make too much noise in the background, as we have experienced as well. Sometimes they want to play pool while I'm talking. But I had to have a very, very, probably one of the, so far, harder talks yesterday. After yesterday's segment, they were really building on it amongst themselves, and there was some questions that arised in terms of falling for or getting confused by the covering of things, as it pertains to relationships. And, we got into a whole discussion around, sometimes people may have a certain look. You may meet guys you might like, or you may meet girls you may like, and they might be your match, and I was sharing some things that they have observed and witnessed even in my own life, some of the EIs who have come and gone. And and I would, it was explaining like, yeah, see that one there, that one was my soulmate, that one, but they had to go. That one there was great, that was like my sister, had to go though. So we were having some discussions around how devious this system is that many of us live in, and how it separates us from our natural counterpart, and it was a rough talk because there was a little bit of frustration, and there was an air of hopelessness for a moment, And it's like, wait a minute, I can meet someone. And then I had pulled out certain examples of different friends they had, and I said, well, look at this one there. You got this friend and guy, and he's tall, and he looks straight out the bush, and let me bring this down. Give me a second, because I don't want to be disturbed by this phone. Usually I mute it before we start, and I didn't. What's that about? All right, I can come back to that later. Anyway, sorry for the distraction, but yeah. So it was the type of discussion that most discussions I prepare for. That was one that took me a little bit off guard because it had a little curveball to it, and it was well, someone could. So you mean to tell me I can meet somebody who's perfect for me, but they may have plantation sickness, which will make us not be able to get together. And then there was some more intricate questions that they were asking. Well, what if somebody I meet, their parents are Negroes, and they're coming under that type of system, but they grow and learn themselves, and they develop, would they still be a good choice? And what would our children be like? Would our children possibly be Negroes because they still have the genetics of their parents? They would hit me with some combinations, boy. I mean, I felt like I was in a heavyweight bout with them yesterday, and they were like, they had all these different ideas, and okay, so what if this, what if that, and what about our friends? Aside from relationships, what if our friends are immersed in that culture and we're trying to do something else or trying to grow beyond that? When we're teaching them, at what point should we pull back and this and that? Then they were like, can we just bring all of our friends to the house and you just teach all of our friends, and any woman or man that we meet, can you just teach them? And then of course, no, it's not that. Yes, you can. Everybody's welcome. Bring your friends by, but it's not that simple. So it was kind of like almost having a wipe tears moment from them. It was like, so I might meet my soulmate, but my soulmate may be, sick in the head still. And because they were overhearing the whole, you want to do righteous, but darkness a lot of times is still present, and you have to scrub those things, from your mind. And, so, we spoke about that, just healthier culture from sicker culture, and how heinous it is. The very idea, the very fact that you could be separated so quickly from your natural counterpart. And you may have people who come forth and come strong in your lives, and at the end of the day, the other programming kicks in. So you almost have to always be suspicious, or at least make sure you know the history. And that's why they kept asking, well, what about if their parents are like this, and what about if all their friends are like this? Can they wake up to it? And then the conversation went from there to talking about relatives. So what about this cousin and that cousin, and are they lost forever? Can they come into the information, or is it because of certain people's genetic dispositions that they'll never wake up to the information? So that that one I had not prepared for. But we went through it, man, and they wanted to keep talking about it all through the night, but I was like, all right, I'm getting tired now. But I did promise them that we would we would build on it some more. We would definitely build on it some more. But I'm sharing that too to prepare some of you. Be ready for that talk. A lot of times we have to talk on how to pick a good one, but many of us, even in our adult years, we get tricked. We get confused. Sometimes the covering looks really good, or the language is really good, but deep down underneath, there's a vile, goblin underneath, or someone is piloting the ship. An alien is piloting the ship, and even though I use the terminology, the spiritual barbarian and stuff, I'm speaking of that metaphorically. But sometimes you might have a person who has a barbaric mind, but they have the coding and the covering of a civilized individual, and you can really get tripped up like that. And of course, the youth, they were sharing some of the situations that they may have had, some of the heartache that they've had with not just little girlfriends and boyfriends, but friends. Just some of the the betrayal that they've already experienced, and they were relating it to some of those same talks about not sometimes being able to identify if someone is from a healthy culture or not. So that's a big subject. That's a huge subject, because then it goes down to, because it was like, well, what do we do, Baba? And then it was like, well, this is why Baba does what he does. Now let's get into the deeper parts of it, because when you have your youth growing up, seeing you do the work, being on stages with you from young, and they just grow up in it. Sometimes they don't understand the profundity of it until they get a little older and they see, their friends who don't have that substantiated back home. All of the things that they may be annoyed about, that they're not able to do or wish they could do, and things like that. And then they see it in their friends, say, wow, because the conversation went there about starting some type of counseling program for some of their friends, because it was like, this friend, his father's lost, because they're now at the point where they can see when adults are lost, and they say, no, they're not really getting what we get, and as a result, we're kind of passing them by, and we don't want that to happen because these are our friends. So can they start coming by the house, like maybe once a strong, and you just, like, we just talk, and like some of the stuff you teach us, you could teach them. So then, what's going to come next is that next heartache. Of course I said yes, but the next heartache they're going to experience is that friend you can't save, and I didn't impress that upon them just yet. Like I said, it's about an obstacle course, and sometimes you have to allow people to, well, all the times you have to allow people to go through it, even your loved ones, and let them say, okay, yeah, we could do that, but don't have any expectations. Just let them go through their process. Everyone's not going to wake up to the same things at the same time, So, yesterday's early dawning segment created a firestorm in a sense of a conversation after that among the youth. And I've often said it, and I'll say it again. What I do is for the youth. Ultimately, Wu-Tang is for the babies. So, those are the really important and critical conversations to have, and they're not always the most comfortable. Sometimes they're very uncomfortable, especially when you might start talking about the utility or the fatalism of some of the efforts that we do and things like that, which you don't share early on. You let them come into that slowly, as time goes, man. But so it was good. So I think on multiple levels there was a trickling forward, of the talks that we had. But like I said, man, just make sure Anwar's on his X-Clan stuff. But and peace everyone in the chat, by the way. Mama Sadaka and Sister Marva, Brother Marvin, of course, Brother Keith, Sister Nikki, Antonio, Justin, I Am Divine, Carlene, Cicely, Cicely pops in once in a while. Sometimes I see that name. Keeping God First. And Gloria, you made it. I know you were saying that after we got off of Blog Talk that you might not be able to tune in because of your data plan. So I guess you worked it out. So that's good. Of course, Brother Shaga, Sister Fase, I think I already gave a shout out to Justin. Double shout out to Justin, just in case. But yeah, man, so just sharing, I always like to try to prepare you all for what may come forward, sometimes at home and abroad. And, like I said, a lot of times you're able to maintain your control in the situation if there's some foresight, there's some forethought of the things that may come forth, man. And that was a good talk that we had, and they were extremely engaged in that idea, and there was a level of peace, Lola. There was a level of, man, this is really messed up. Now combine it with also right now they're really on this piece of Kia. They're really on this Underground, that show Underground. They're really on that tip. So that, they adding all the things together. They got Underground, all the things that I've been talking about, and then they're looking at their friends and they're just putting the picture together. And it's not looking good. So they really been talking about lately, squadding up. So we've been planning that, creating a youth squad, because they were like, we basically wanted a squad. They were telling me they wanted a squad of youth bosses, basically, young people who were making power moves, whether it's, whether you're a fighter or you're a rapper or, whatever it is you do, basketball player, or you just, your grades are off the chart. They were like, we want to just really get a squad of bosses. So, I sat down and said, look, man, a lot of your current friends are not going to be able to be in that squad. If you're really going to make it a squad of people who making power moves, you're going to have to either tell your friends to step it up or, because or they just can't be down with the team, and I think that sparked, just that idea right there sparked some things, man. So yeah, man, it's good when you can catch this stuff early. It's good when you can catch this stuff early and try to move forward from there. But anyway, and Omar says, make sure everyone hits the notifications bell. YouTube is funny. You can subscribe but don't get notified when the shows begin. Oh, I didn't even know you got notified when a live show began. But the times at this point. So I mean, put them on. Put them in your reminders. Don't rely on YouTube. Don't do that. But yeah, man. Some of these conversations, just be prepared for. And yesterday we were dealing with just like empire building and some of the things that you want to put in place and some of the things that may be necessary as a part of that work. And I know a lot of times, I like to clarify certain terms, especially those terms that we tend to use interchangeably, and I know two terms we use a lot that I don't use too much, but emperor, like I said, if you're going to establish empires, see yourself as an emperor. I spoke about that yesterday. And then I was saying that, a lot of times, as I pretty much never use the word king. I just don't. It doesn't even resonate with me really, or queen, like that. Just terms that don't really resonate with me too tough. But I figured I would just share real quick for those of you who are locked in, or just really, utilizing certain terminology, and using it interchangeably. Know the difference, because I think it will help you. Like I said, when you start really building, we talk about nation building a lot. And I know, a lot of these terms have become bastardized because they've been introduced into pop culture or subversive culture. And now we don't want to use them anymore. Like Hotep. You watch YouTube video stuff now, nobody says Hotep in their videos anymore. Nobody wants to be, considered a Hotepper at this point. Nation building. You're not really going to hear those terms, that much. And I'm sure peace king and peace queen and all that's going to be phased out. Woke has been used to death. It was cool in Erykah Badu's song. Yeah, but now it's like, come on, man. Just enough. Say it right. Let's be woke about our intelligence. But it was cool in the song, because in the song you're going to use artistic license. But when we speak, we don't have to speak as though, we're freestyling. But in any event, so just the idea of the emperor, which I said earlier, I'm gonna give you just a little cursory thing real quick. You a lot of times will have like the idea of an emperor, you have an idea of a king, prince, right? We use prince, a lot of times when referring to our children and things like that. So let's just look at it real quick. And again, the reason I don't use a lot of this terminology because it just um, doesn't really resonate. But real quick, cursory, king is Germanic word. It comes from kin, right? So whenever you hear someone say, that's King so and so, whatever, that they're dealing with a rulership that comes through a bloodline. Okay, kin. I'm pretty sure a lot of you know the word kin, right? So kin meaning familial or family relationships. So that's where you get the idea of a king, right? And a king will typically rule one province, excuse me, or one kingdom. Okay, that's what the king has. Under that, you have the prince, right? And the prince will usually rule what we call a princeton. Okay, no different than the school Princeton. That's where it comes from. That's like you have a kingdom, princeton. Okay, and the prince may rule, a certain area. Underneath that, you'll have like a duke, right? And the duke will usually be given certain lands and things like that, or a certain province to rule. Now, all of them are typically subjects of the king. All right, the duke. Oh, break it up, break it 1-9. Okay, okay, okay. Tell me if it's good. Pause, pause. Tell me if it sounds right. It is still breaking up. Yeah. Oh yeah. All right. Let's see. Should have cleared up by now. I want him to delay. Got me. Thumbs up. There we go. Thank you, brother Shaka. All right. So yeah, man. So you have. Thank you, everyone, for letting me know we're back now. I don't know what that's about, man. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes you love me. Sometimes you no love me. I think it's where I'm broadcasting from. But so yeah, so you have these different terms, like and those three are subject to the king. Now, typically, when you're dealing with an emperor controls multiple countries or multiple kingdoms. Typically, now these are loose definitions because depending on the region that you're at, one may call themselves an emperor and one may call themselves a king, and they may actually be doing the same thing. You see, they may actually have the same type of control. What I mean by that, but typically an emperor, when you talk about an empire, it consists of multiple kingdoms. Okay, so now you can look at that idea of a kingdom or multiple kingdoms however you want. Like for us, you may not look at it like, okay, well, here, let me give it to you simple like this. You may have children, right? Kin, and you or they may establish kingdoms, right? And they may be subject to your empire as the parent. Because keep in mind, like this, especially like in Yoruba culture, just to give you a little bit of background on it, in Yoruba culture, your parents are considered like deities. Breaking up, Nikki? I think you might be delayed, Nikki. I'll wait until some because it was breaking up earlier, but supposedly we cleared it up. So, Nikki, I think it's your connection. Is you saying the silence now? Yeah, I think it might be on your end, sis. I think, unless somebody else tells me. But we were breaking up before, and then it got clear. So I think maybe you might just have a little delay on your line. Maybe. Okay, it's good now. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So yeah. So like in Yoruba structure, your parents are considered like deities. Which is very interesting because when you hear people speak about Ifa and Orisha, you don't really hear them talk about that. At least I have not. And that's something you have to, like I was taught very long ago. Well, not taught, as I was scolded. I'm gonna keep it real. I was scolded. many years ago, you can't get everything out of a book, Haru. And it wasn't said as gently as I just said it. When I asked, and I was asking for information on my name. When I was named, um, I was like, okay, I not try not to be a bother, especially because it was a language barrier. I was like, is there somewhere I can study more about these words, about this name, these concepts? And I got scolded, man. Can't get everything out of a book, Haru. You sit and you think about the name. Oh, okay, all right, Baba. My bad. That's how it is, man. So, and I was, by the way, I was a grown man already by then. But that's the type of reverence you have to have, man, because at the end of the day, we're all babies in most of this, you know. Um, but anyway, so and now that I think, I'm sure that elder was yelling at the barbarian inside of me. Not yelling. I don't mean to say yelling, because men don't yell, men holler. I'm sure he was hollering at the barbarian within me, seeing that Western culture come out. Can I get a book? After all of these divine experiences, you still looking for a book. You live and you learn, man. Life is it's about growing, and mistakes are made to be corrected, but yeah, man. So the idea, like I said, your parents are considered like deities, and I want you to understand something, that Yoruba is a language. So when we say Yoruba, like some people say I practice Yoruba, then that means you're practicing a culture and a language. That doesn't mean that you're practicing Ifa. Doesn't mean that you're dealing with Orisha. It means that you're practicing or perfecting or learning a culture and a language. So whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Muslim, or like what we say back home, like I'm called a traditionalist back home. And traditionalist is a nationally recognized like religion, quote unquote. And that's in Ghana, Guinea, Nigeria, Ivory Coast. If you're a traditionalist, it's cool. It's like here we have Christian, we have Muslim. These are like nationally recognized religions, and you can say like I'm a traditionalist there as well, and it's respected the same way. You don't have as many traditionalists, of course, but it's still respected in that sense. So whether you're a traditionalist, or again you're Christian, or if you're Muslim, you're still Yoruba, or you're still Igbo, all the same. All right. So the terms are good to understand, because like I say, a lot of times you got to learn to learn. You got to learn to learn. You got to learn the culture itself, man. And that exists outside of your spiritual doctrine. There's a lot of good stuff just in the culture. Just in the way that people deal with each other, the way that people get married, the way that people dress, and the decorum and the etiquette that they use, So like every day in that culture, when you wake up, you go to your mother, you go to your father, and for like the guys, we have to go all the way down. We prostrate and in front of them, and the girls, they get down on one knee until they're told they can come up. And that's how you say good morning. It ain't what's up. It ain't a pound. It ain't a fist pump or nothing like that. So that's one of the reasons, like I was saying, I am an ageist. There are different things that people of different ages are should and are going to receive. Now that comes from my culture, you see. So, but you do that because you're greeting your parents and adorning like you would be greeting your God. That's the science behind that. And again, let me reiterate: Christian, Muslim, traditionalist. That's how you getting up in the dawning. You going, whether it's usually most houses don't have 2 floors like that, but you're going into that room and you're greeting your parents like that, and you're on the floor. Okay, so again, just looking at the terminology for a minute. So now that you understand the relationship as far as deity being implanted, or your parents representing that deityhood, not one person is God, anything like that. No, your parents. Okay. Now, again, when you're looking at an emperor versus a king in that sense, we were talking about empire building, or what one might call nation building, or kingdoms, things like that. Um, Typically, the thought is held that your king is a representation of God, right? Understand that we're speaking about Eurocentric perspective in most senses, all right? But again, we're using these quote unquote seemingly English words, so it's good to understand the root of the words that you're using, regardless if you agree with the cultures or not. Okay, so the idea here, peace, brother Byron. So the idea here again is that the king is a representation of God, whereas the emperor is a god. Okay, that's the difference. The emperor is a deity, whereas the king is a representation of the deity. Now, if you look at, again, going back to Yoruba culture, like I was just explaining, you get down. That's why when people see me as a Baba, the men prostrate, you know, and I don't require it because I understand that not everyone is of my culture. You see, but saying me, if I go back home and I'm in front of my elder, I prostrate. I go down, all the way down, like push up position, just so you could picture it, you know. Um, and not an extended push up, of course, but you go down and you're recognizing the line there, and the women or the girls, they go down on one knee again. So it's almost like you're seeing your parents as those emperors, because again, in Yoruba culture, parents are deified. And I'll just reiterate, if y'all didn't get that point earlier, it's a sad thing that that's not taught here. We talk about godparents all day. Nobody talks about godparents back home unless you're talking about the godparent when you were born, your father, your mother's best friend, and you say, "Hey, will you be godparent of the child?" That's godparents. But aside from that, no, nobody deal with that stuff like that, man. That's some Catholic stuff we took up over here. We deal with our parents, our blood parents. Always living, whether they are have physical bodies or do not have physical bodies. Those are our first deities. Before you dealing with Orisha, before you're dealing with before you even know what Ori is, before you probably even know what an Ogun is. Like I said, in our custom, in our tradition, you come down in adorning, the way you greet your parents and say, well, they would say good morning, but or ekaro, but the way you greet your parents is you're prostrating as a guy. And Justin, you just asked, so you lay flat? Yeah, basically, yeah. And the girls would go down on that knee. So you're already showing the deification of your parents very early. You see, that's where you start. Then later, you're gonna learn about maybe Oludumare. Later, when you have the wherewithal in terms of your mentality to even understand such concepts. But you may not get that right away. Okay, but you'll learn about Oludumare. You'll learn about the creation story, and again, remember, your family may be Christian, your family may be Muslim, your family may be traditionalist. So you may learn about, the Prophet Muhammad, or you may learn about Jesus later and Mary, or again, you may start learning about what they call over there the gods, Shango, Ogun, Mami Wata, Yemonja, so forth and so on. But again, before you get any of that, your first deification is to your parents. Now, you think about it, for a lot of us who may send our children to public schooling, think about what happens in those environments when they're required to pledge allegiance to the flag. They're pledging allegiance to the empire, you see, and they do that before. And I mean, I can't even say before, because they don't teach religion in schools. You may learn about religion in your 13th or 14th year in college. Later on, you know what I mean? And when I mean 13, 14 years schooling, if you understand. So some of that concept is taken. So even in the idea of an empire, some of that concept is is taken. Brother Byron has me laughing. He says that's why Yoruba men have developed triceps, shoulders, and chests. Hey, it could be, man, because he's not lying there. I always thought it was from the farming, but he might be right. It could be from prostrating every day as a small child, But and then I guess that's why the Yoruba women have such developed thighs and gluteus maximus from getting down on that knee. I guess they have to alternate knees to make sure it's balanced. But so yeah, man, just something to think about, because I wanted to just follow up on that a little bit, because we were talking yesterday and we were using certain terms, and and what I was using is I kept talking about, men build your empire, and then I was saying kingdoms, but there's a difference. So again, for me and my family, I have, my youth may build kingdoms, and those kingdoms may fall under my jurisdiction as being the empire building, or empire builder, excuse me, or the emperor. So remember, again, that word king is kin. That word king is kin. So it's family. So they're my family. You see, so they would be the king. You understand what I'm saying? So, and then they may pass down control of certain things to their princes. You see? Now I know you all probably listening and saying, but what about the women? What about the sisters? What I'm saying, this is that misogynistic stuff he keeps doing. He's a masochist. There's a place for the women, but as I told you before, it is the men who build the structures of the civilizations first. Now the foundations may exist on even feminine principles, but the ones who got to pick up these hammers and build it and pull out these saws and these T-squares and actually build it's the men. So it's very important for men and women, I'm talking to both of you, to understand these customs, these ideas, and these terms, because sisters, you got to teach these to your children. So if you got them little children, they have to see you and the father as deified. Okay. And if you're a single parent, get attached. All right. Let me just make that real clear. Don't have your children seeing one gender side as the deity and the other one just as periphery. That's not healthy. It doesn't create healthy children. I mean, I think we've seen that. We don't have to keep talking about that. Well, we probably do have to keep talking about it, but either way, it's there. So yeah, that idea is a critical thing, man. In terms of really getting to that place where you can understand, like I said, because somebody asked me that not too long ago, and they said, well, I know you're into the Yoruba thing, and I was saying, no, not really, because I was sharing that. Well, I do definitely, I study different things and I teach different things, but I've developed a culture. So I deal with Ifa and Orisha, and they was like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I said, no, that's different from Yoruba. And I had explained to them, no, Yoruba is a culture. Yoruba is a culture and a language, and a people. But Yoruba is not a spiritual system. However, that culture and that language, man, let me tell you something. Look at here. You learn a healthy culture, and you're going to find that you don't need as much from religion as you might think you do. Because a lot of times we're scraping and we're pulling and we're trying to find scraps from our religious systems to teach us how to live. You know, um, but the truth is, we don't need it a lot of times. Because right there in our very culture, it tells us how to live. Okay, Byron says, Chief, I do not wish to interrupt your flow. However, I got an insight this dawning about Ogun, which I'd like to share. Is that okay? Absolutely. I don't have the phone lines up. There's a way to actually, you could actually just join the Hangout. But if you want to share it here, how could I do this? I could bring you in maybe on Skype. Yeah. Give me a second, Brother Byron. I could, if you want to type it, that's fine. If not, I could probably bring you in on Skype. You just let me know which one you want to do. All right. Because I think I do have you added on my Skype. But anyway, So, but it's either one is fine with me. If you want to type it, that's cool, and I'll just read it out loud, or you can come on and share it. But so yeah, like I said, I just wanted to kind of clear that up a little bit, or not clear it up, just add on to that. That I'll type it. Okay, cool. All right, after you type it, brother Byron, I'll read it. I'll read it aloud for everyone. Brother Byron said he had an insight this dawning about Ogun, which he wanted to share. Okay, cool. So yeah, man. These are the things to share with your youth. And again, when you talk about empire building, you're talking about encapsulating multiple kingdoms within one unit. And again, like I said, you can look at kingdoms as different things. It doesn't just have to be find a lot of times when we talk about empire, we, like I said yesterday, we talk about finances, and you have to be able to go beyond finances. But like I said, you you want to learn, you want to get a customs and cultures down. And honestly, get that, like I said, you have children who will learn Yoruba customs and culture before they even start learning about what religion they are, or Igbo custom and culture. That's what sometimes there's a problem. You may have an Igbo person who's a Christian and a Yoruba person who's a Christian, and the families don't approve the marriage. Nowadays, like, people are now more like just marrying for love, like just going ahead and doing it. A lot of my friends are like, yeah, my mother didn't want me to marry this person. I just did it, whatever. But they recognize that the cultures have to align together, and some things in your cultures may be antithetical to someone else's culture, even though you may be practicing the same religion or the same spiritual systems. So the culture becomes a critical thing. Okay, so Brother Byron says, on a basic level, Ogun is considered to be the greatest warrior. However, there is much more to Ogun, some of which came to me this dawning. Okay, he's giving it in pieces. All right, so I'll read it once it's all through. I don't want to break it up too much. But yeah, man. So you think about that in terms of when you're nation building, and it's nothing wrong with that word, man. I know, because when Sister Leah said that on the show when she came on, I felt exactly what she was saying when she was like, yeah, I hate when I hear people say nation building. It just kind of takes me into a certain place. I get it. I definitely get it, man, because again, so many people have bastardized it. And I have to admit, even when I hear certain things and it's sad, I kind of, my eyebrow goes up. Oh, what's this person talking about? And they say, hey, peace, hotep, brother. Yeah, I see you over the nation bill. Oh, one of these, and that's not the way I would like to be. But again, it's very similar to, like I said, the conversation I had with my youth yesterday about a vile system can lead you away from your natural counterpart. So in the same instance, the vileness of a system can lead you away from your natural and root sciences, by creating a mockery of them. And in a sense, we become caricatures of the very systems and the very ideas that we say we represent in that sense, which is sad. Sister Omozuwati says this is also practiced by the Edo people. Wherever you see your parents and elders for the first time in the day, you hit the floor. I want you to note that the sister said, wherever you see them for the first time in the day. So, your customs are not hidden in that sense. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I say, I said it in one of my books. I don't remember which one, but there's one culture in Africa, just different ethnic groups, but there's one culture. I know that that's hard to imagine. Even for some of the people who live there, it's hard to imagine because they think things are so separated. But most of the times when you see those extreme separations, it's because of intrusion. Okay, Brother Byron says, all right, let me get back to this again. He says, on a basic level, Ogun is considered to be the greatest warrior. However, there is much more to Ogun, some of which came to me this dawning. Ogun not only breaks people, obstacles, and enemies, but he also breaks down and analyzes the content of one's character with excessive speed and accuracy. That's the acidic force of Ogun. Then he links with his brother Eshu and selecting the right method to deal with the individual. Ogun is so much more Okay, give me a second. I know you lost me for a second there. That's the same thing that happened yesterday. YouTube kind of froze up on me a little bit. You should be able to hear me now, but I know there was some silence for a second. Um, yeah, I should be back. Okay, should be back. Let me just type that. All right, loud and clear. There we go. Yeah, it did that same thing yesterday. I don't know. It's funny. You know, actually, it's probably just I did some updates on my machine. Ever since then, there's been some little ghost in the machine acting up. But yeah, I'm going to reiterate because the breakup probably took away from what Brother Byron is saying. Again, he said on a basic level, Ogun is considered to be the greatest warrior. However, there's much more to Ogun, some of which came to me this dawning. Ogun not only breaks people, obstacles, and enemies, but he also breaks down and analyzes the content of one's character with excessive speed and accuracy. That's the acidic force of Ogun. Then he links with his brother Eshu in selecting the right method to deal with the individual. Ogun is so much more than a brute force than he's often depicted as. Excuse me. Right. And the thing is, let me add on to that for you, Brother Byron. It's not so much that Ogun deals with Eshu to select the right method to deal with the person. Ogun then passes the person off, or that component, or that ego, really is what we're talking about, off to Eshu, and Eshu deals with the person. So it's like a constant handoff in a sense like that. Because Eshu, remember, Eshu is going to be the one that's going to mete out the justice in that sense. Eshu is really, even though that's why there's such a very interesting comparison between Eshu, Musa, Moses, and Tahuti. Musa, Moses, Tahuti, they're considered to be the law bringers, as you hear me say, right? But Eshu is also the law bringer, because Eshu delivers, he's a messenger. I mean, it's bi-directional messages. So he's sending our messages to the divine, but he's coming back with the message from Olodumare or Olorun as well. And many of the stories, it will tell you that Olorun and Eshu are the closest of friends, because one time Eshu saved Olorun's life. But ultimately the idea there again is that Eshu is the minister of justice in the Yoruba pantheon. So that's the one. I think even when I read that story, the imprisonment of Obatala, or portions of it, of course, I had kind of brought that. I think I did. In that story, they call him the god of fate. But it's still the same idea again, because he's the one who's actually gonna figure out a creative way to get you into your place. But Ogun has to break down the ego first, like you said, and analyze. He's constantly analyzing. Like I say, Ogun is the accountant of the universe. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not just about the brute force at all. In fact, believe it or not, you'll see more brutish behavior out of a Shango than you will of Ogun. You'll see more brutish behavior from a Yemoja than an Ogun, because Ogun deals with extreme patience. We don't talk about that aspect for some reason that much with Ogun. I think people just like talking about the violence more than anything, but they never talk about how patient Ogun is, because Ogun is not emotional. So even though you may get that brute force, it's not unmeditated violence. It's not just he goes into a rage and goes crazy. He doesn't do that. Shango will do that. Oya do that. And you find that Shango and Oya people tend to be a bit emotional. Oshun people are very emotional, but there's I don't want to say a coldness, but remember, you're dealing with iron. So yeah, there's kind of a coldness. It takes a lot to heat iron up so that it will bend and change its posture or change its position. Well, that's Ogun's patience. You can beat it, you can hit it, you can heat it up. It will stay the same for a long time, until it finally, burns you, in a sense, if you look at it like that. So, yeah, absolutely, man. There's a lot more to the deity of herbs, Ogun, than people would like to imagine. But people like fairy tales. But give thanks for that, Brother Byron. Thank you so much. I know that helped people out. I know it did. Brother Anwar says, um, okay, tell the young princess I say good night as well. Yeah, sleep. Tell her. Let's see, what time is it there? Oh yeah, it's bedtime there. Yeah. Tell her to sleep well. She's gonna be a much better person when she wakes up tomorrow. She's gonna be smarter and even prettier. Okay, Brother Anwar says, I can definitely agree. I'm currently experiencing the benefit of definition. Ogun has been helping break down my strategy, allowing Eshu and Ochosi to get in alignment. Yeah, man. Brother Antonio says, usually when a quiet person finally runs out of patience, people tend to act as though they didn't deserve it. Man, who you telling? You preaching to the choir right now. You preaching to the choir. Yep. When we finally get to that point where, because usually we give people a lot of warnings. It's like the gorilla. A lot of warnings. Don't do it. Don't do it. That's not right. That's not right. Please stop. Please, I'm asking you. It's the hawk. The hawk says, you don't want to see me when I'm angry. Don't make me angry. And then they keep antagonizing, and then he just destroys the town, throws people through windows and everything. And then they chase him down and want to kill him. After they just provoked and antagonized him. See, that's just the rotten nature of some people. That's all, Brother Antonio. you know they think that there's some people who will manipulate and rely on the decency of other people, so they get a person who's quiet, or like an Ogun energy, or like a Yemonja energy, or even from a zodiacal perspective, a Taurian energy, a Taurus. Taurus are very cool as long as just leave them alone, like bulls. They're very cool to be around, man. Very sturdy, reliable. But because people sometimes they're like that, people want to see what's underneath the surface, so they'll begin to antagonize them beyond human tolerability. And then when they finally react like a human, because you've pushed them beyond their levels of tolerance, then people will point fingers and say, look at that, see, look at that. That's what I'm talking about. It's so horrible. It's such a vile thing to do to a person. It's just really horrible to do that to somebody. If you love someone, why would you want to see them push beyond their human limits? Why would you even be intolerable? Knowing that you're doing something wrong, especially when you have someone who's telling you, like, don't do that, stop, or you're hurting me. Please don't do that again. I don't want to have to do this or have to be this. And you just keep going. Then you deserve what you get, as far as I'm concerned. That's why for those of you who are like that, quiet people who run out of patience, like Brother Marvin says, Marvin the Magi, and I thought I needed anger management. Well, maybe you do, but don't let me put the disclaimer. I'm not giving medical advice. Don't get me sued. This is for entertainment purposes only. Yeah, that's a disclaimer. I was trying to remember. Everything that you're hearing is for entertainment purposes only. Yeah, don't get me sued. But but yeah, man, yeah, people just play games, man. They just play games, and then they get what they get at the end. That's my feeling, man. Justin says, my youth, who is actually like a gorilla, physically looks like one too. He gives the warning. We do tend to, the animal forms that we do tend to look like, we do tend to act like. Pay attention to that stuff. There's usually a congruency between certain things, with certain types of people. Even when you look at zodiacal energies, look at cancers. You can always tell cancers by their eyes. Cancers always got something different about their eyes, something interesting, whether their eyebrows or their eyes have a certain shape to them, or they're a certain color. That Cancerian energy, man. That cancers are seers. They look right through you like ain't nothing there. And they feel all whatever you're feeling about them. They feel. That's why they act so crazy. Because when you're upset with them, they can feel how upset you are, even though you're trying not to express it. Yeah, cancers are off the meter, and of course that's a Yemonja energy. And so So yeah, man. So there's a lot to that, man. But like I said, we were just talking about different things, man. We're flowing from Ogun, of course. Brother Byron hit us with a gem there, and that whole acidic nature that you hear me talk about with Ogun. Just pay attention. I know no one else really uses that. Nobody really says that Ogun is ASIC or Ogun is an accountant, anything like that. But you have to be able to update some of the terminology sometimes. And again, that goes into the same idea I was sharing earlier about learning the culture over just learning the stories. Like I said, you can't extract one from the other. And I've used the example, you can't just take vitamins but live in an unhealthy environment. It's not going to work. You can't take vitamins and not get out in the sun. Let me just make it real simple. You live in a place where there's no sun, you're going to be sick all the time. Period. I don't care how many vitamins you take. Matter of fact, that reminds me. Let me take another sip of my green juice. Speaking of which, oof, that's nasty. Ooh, that's nasty. But it's good for me. But yeah, you gotta get that sun on you, man. You gotta get that sun on you. So, even like we're talking about the empire building, it's good. Like I said, when you start to learn the terminology, and so that way when you look at certain examples of it, you'll understand what you're looking at. Like Sister Sequoia had asked yesterday, what's the difference between a concubine and a wife? And I was saying, you got to look at you have to look at the words, of course, and decide which one. You might not be either one of them. Once you define them, you say, nah, I'm not. That doesn't resonate with me. I don't like that. But like I said, there's flexibility. So even when you're defining the emperor versus a king, there's still flexibility because, for instance, let's see, you had King Louis, right? And a bunch of them. But you had Napoleon, who was called an emperor. But technically, they had the same type of reign in terms of the amount of provinces and stuff that they possessed. It's just, but Napoleon decided I'm going to be Emperor Napoleon as opposed to King Napoleon, and one said I'm going to be a king. But like I said, typically an emperor is going to control or can control the provinces of the king, but the emperor is seen as like God on earth, whereas the king is seen as a representation of the God. So like the emperor that we could identify, I mean, the only really remaining emperor that we have is in China, but the underlying emperor today is the Pope. Because remember, the Pope's full name is Pope God on Earth. They always leave out that God on Earth part, though. Very tricky buggers they are. But the Pope is Pope God on Earth. So that lets you know that he has an empire which is controlling many kingdoms. Because the Pope basically is, the ruler of the planet. Brother Antonio says, is there a difference in the culture of traditional versus non-traditional home? When you say traditional, do you mean like someone who practices Ifa and Orisha versus someone who practices Christianity or Islam? I want to get some clarification on your question before I answer it. The Last Emperor was my movie when I was very young, like 4. Yeah, that was a good movie. The Last Emperor. It's a good movie. You saw how much the U.S. had a hand in controlling policy there, with that film. Okay, Brother Antonio, you did not answer my question. You said on the continent. Is there a difference in the culture of traditional versus non-traditional home on the continent? No, I'm asking, when you say traditional, are you saying one who practices Orisha or Ifa versus non-traditional, one who practices like a different religion? Like, how are you defining traditional versus non-traditional? Because like I explained earlier, traditionalist back home is one who practices the old spiritual ways or the old religions. So is that what you're referring to? On the continent doesn't clarify it for me. So I need to understand traditional versus non-traditional in what you're saying. All right. One thing I don't do, which you guys may have picked up on, if I don't have full and total understanding of a question, I don't answer it. I need all of that question. I need every word. I need to know exactly. I need to understand your question before I answer. I mean, you would think that's just a everyday baseline practice. Unfortunately, it isn't. So when I'm doing that, don't think I'm just trying to, bug you. I'm trying to really make sure I answer your question intelligently, because a lot of times people have this habit, which is, I think, a combination of ego versus being polite. They'll ask you a question, you'll answer it, not really give them the answer they were looking for, in terms of like, you're not even answering the actual question because maybe they didn't phrase it right. And they won't say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't phrase that right. I meant, this is what I meant. They may do that when they don't like the answer, but sometimes it's ego, sometimes it's just being polite. So I could give him the wrong answer and he might be like, oh, thanks. And know that, nah, I wasn't really saying that. It's a fine line, because sometimes, like I said, people use that to deflect. So he says, my bad. Yes, one who practices Ifa versus Christianity or Islam. Yeah, there's a difference in the homes. Yeah, there's a difference. But let me say this to you. Let's say if like you came from the outside in, right? You never been to the continent, and you're going into a home for the first time. You probably wouldn't even notice the difference at first. You probably wouldn't really even notice it, because the culture, some places you go, the culture is a little bit more rich than others. I'm not gonna lie, and I'm talking about certain countries. Nigeria is one place that the culture is still pretty rich. Certain other countries, it's like, like for instance in Ghana, they have this strong move around what they call family planning. Family planning is the same thing as like, for in the US, what we call Planned Parenthood, but they call it family planning. It's eugenics. And one of the things they teach at a lot of the family planning meetings, and this I'm not making this up, this is the language that they use. They teach you to live like the whites. And that's what they say. The whites, or the Obruni, but the whites. So one of the things they teach in family planning, because I went to some meetings before, because I was like, what is this about? And they teach you like, you shouldn't have so many children. You should not have more than 1 to 2 children, because that's what the whites do. And the whites have money. So if you want to have money, you have to start doing things like the whites do. So you should only have 1 to 2 children. And by whites, just so you understand, I'm saying Caucasians. All right. So certain places you go to, there's you may find less of the culture, because there's an aggressive movement to adopt other. And I'm not saying all of Ghana's like that. Let me be clear on that. I don't want anybody getting offended. Because you go to certain places in Nigeria, it's like you wouldn't even know you're in Nigeria. People, they speak English. English is so clear. You go to certain parts of Lagos, you have to ask the person, where are you from? You think they're from the UK or something, so it's dependent. But yeah, man, certain places are more steeped in culture than other. But yeah, honestly, if you went to for the first time, depending on where you're at, sometimes the culture is still very rich, and a lot of it has to do with ethnic pride. Honestly, like, because you could have a person who's a Christian or a Muslim, and they still may know about traditionalist studies, because they're proud of all of it. They're proud of everything that was created on what they consider to be their soil. So a lot of the people who I worked with back home were Muslims. Some were Christians, but they were teaching Ifa and knew Ifa and knew the Odu in and out, so it's a little different there, and sometimes it's hard for us to imagine, sometimes when we grow in a place where we don't necessarily have local pride like that, because we don't have that local sense of ownership, so you'll have Christians who will sing songs about Olodumare. They'll sometimes even sing songs about the Orisha, but then they'll say, but there's one God, so, but, so they always will kind of wrap it up in that back home, but they'll still know the traditions and things like that. Now, you're going to go home and go to the house and see pictures of Orisha on the wall. No, you ain't going to go to nobody's house see even a Orisha practitioner. It's not, they don't look at artwork the same way you and I might look at artwork. It's not just something pretty to look at, So you might find things in a shrine, but so, yeah, like I said, you're going to be so steeped in the culture that you'll probably, you probably would find very little difference in that sense at first. You know what I mean? You'd find very, very little difference in the beginning. Yeah, man. But like I said, get the culture under your belt. Get the culture and practices. And that's from any African nation, man. I don't like how I'm gonna express that. People get a little bit too fixated on the West. There's other cultures. There's other places, man. Beautiful places back home, man. Morocco. Why does anybody talk about Morocco except for the Muslims and the Moors? Marrakesh is a beautiful place. There's so many. It's a huge place, man. And like I said, you'll learn that there's one culture. There's one culture in Africa. That culture is peace. Trust me, man. It's peace. And every component that culture represents is to ensure peace. It may be different languages and things like that, man, but ultimately the cultural agenda all across the continent is the same doggone thing. That's what people always ask me, well, what's a good language to start with? I say whatever one's accessible. Any of them better than English. Anyone. I don't care which one. They're all going to be better than English. You might say, well, should I learn Yoruba? Man, just pick one. Start wherever you are. Find out if there's a local teacher somewhere in your town or wherever you can get a good price on an online course. Just start with that one. Honestly. Because even when you start learning the language, it's going to start giving you an understanding of the culture and how you can perceive and look at things. That's why I said after a while, you get to a point where, yeah, that's right. I forgot. Gloria, you went to Morocco. Gloria says Morocco was beautiful, but I was the darkest person there. Why is there a but? and Gloria, you're darkly packed. I'm sure most places you go, you're the darkest person there. You might go to Mississippi, you'd be the darkest person there. You darkly packed. That's a good thing. There ain't no but. What's that but? Yeah, Duolingo has Swahili. Yeah. Yeah. I started it. I didn't finish it. But Duolingo, that app is heaven sent. That app is heaven sent. Yeah, but I'm just using Morocco as an example. Of course, I'm not saying you got to go to Morocco or learn Arabic, but start wherever you want to start, man. Like I said, you're gonna find eventually that the cultures are the same. Or I should say again, the cultural initiatives are the same. All right, let me read this. Brother Anwar asked a question. Chief, in reference to statement of stability you made, yes. I knew that was you, Akia. I couldn't see your picture. I'm not going to say your name. But when you said that you were in a polygynous union since you were 19, I thought it was you. Peace, sis. I got your email today, by the way. I'll check it out later. See, some of y'all got 3 or 4 different names, and so it takes me a minute to catch up on you. All right, let me go back to Anwar. Okay, so Anwar asked, Chief, in reference to the statement of stability you made yesterday, can an Anu man find greater stability with an Anu woman? I know the answer to be yes. I'm only asking for more insight. Come on, man. Weird behind question you just asked Anwar. He asked a yes or no question, then gave me the answer as yes. So you want me to expound on your yes? So, can an Anu man find greater stability with an Anu woman? Maybe. I got to be honest. Maybe. This kind of goes back to the conversation I was having with my youth yesterday. Like, sometimes the covering looks good, and you might have somebody who's completely enraptured in some great and amazing culture and amazing teachings, but they still got the goblin going on inside of them. I know some of the females who are in Anu who don't have their heads on straight. They're hard-headed. I've been talking to them for years, and they just will not submit to the teachings. So their lives are not growing as a result. They're happy to be in Anu because it's the best information that they've come across for them. I'm not saying it's the best information, but for them, it's the best that they come across, but they just won't apply it. So you might think that, okay, I'm picking, in-house and I got something, but you might not. You may find great stability. Again, stability breeds stability. When in your mating choices in that sense, you don't necessarily want to cancel out people who may not be conscious as you perceive consciousness. I often say that, especially in terms of like supporters for the work I do. It comes from the most unlikely of places a lot of times. Sometimes, Brother Anwar, and that's for brothers listening, it might be that sister, who seems to be completely enraptured in American culture. Ultimately, understand that if she doesn't have any guidance or light, then she's going to pick what's accessible to her. You want to look at her customs and culture. Start there. You may find a woman who's a straight up diehard Christian, but she got some real good culture she's coming under. You'll get more stability with her than someone who knows all about the Orisha and or just different spiritual sciences, and the study has been back and forth to Kemet 3 times, and has gone to South Africa and here and there, and it's gone to the East and gone to the Congo, but she has no real culture. She has no real protocol. She has no decorum. She has no etiquette. You're not going to be able to get any stability with him. Maybe, raised by one parent, been moving from the reason she goes back and forth to the continent so much, because she moves from place to place to place to place. Ain't been able to hold down an apartment for longer than a year. Ain't been in a relationship for longer than 3 years. But she's conscious. You're not going to get any stability with someone like that, man. So you don't want to necessarily rule out individuals who may not look quote unquote conscious. Because I tell you, any sister I've ever dealt with, she looked different after I got a hold of her anyway. And she ate different by the time I got a hold with her. She had a different name. She talked different. Everything. So, remember that you build the civilization, and as a heterosexual man, and heterosexual women absorb themselves into your civilization. In fact, everybody, heterosexual, homosexual, they all absorb themselves into the civilizations built by heterosexual men. So you have to start there first, man. But you'll find stability, honestly. Like I said, stability, yes, stability breeds stability, but ultimately, don't rule out someone because they are part of a different religion. Focus on culture. What kind of culture do they have? For instance, you might find somebody you meet, and I know you already have a woman, so I know this is a broad question, but you're probably asking for the brothers or whatever. But you might meet somebody and look at how she greets you. Look at her ideas about sex and where she got those ideas from. Now, she may tell you, I was raised like this. And, for instance, you might have a Christian. I'll give you a real easy thing. You might find a Christian who grew up in the Caribbean, right? And then you have a straight up Christian that grew up in New York. You're dealing with two totally different people. Off the bat already, I'm taking the Caribbean one. Off the bat. And I didn't meet him. I don't even know how they look. I'm taking the Caribbean one. Because I know I could be off, but there's a greater chance that she has a healthier culture than the one who grew up with the rats and the roaches and with the rest of us up here in New York. She's going to have a different understanding of nature. She may know how to rough it a little bit. She's may have lived in a healthier environment. There's so many things that come with that. Because of the culture. Culture is more important, honestly, than someone's religion. Now, your religion fits inside of a culture, of course, but customs, manners, and practices, that's what you want to really be aimed for. Now, I'm not discounting the Anu women. I'm really not. I'm not trying to do that. We got a couple of very eligible women already in the chat that I know of personally, but you yank women up. You know what I mean? Like yank them up into your fold, man. You know, as you if you passing through it, I know you got that delivery service. You might be passing through a corporate building delivering a package or something, man. And you see a woman who's a good candidate. I know not you on one because again, I know you have a woman, but you might see someone like she's earnest, she's kind. You know, she has a sweet spirit. She's quiet. She's soft spoken. Those are the things you want to look for, you know? And you might say, she's a good person. Forget all the other stuff. She's just a good person. She's got such a good energy. She's sweet, you know? Now, you'd be surprised what a woman would do for a man she loves. You know, you'd say, hey, look, baby, you see this bone in my nose? Well, you're gonna have to put a bone through your nose too, because that's our family thing. Oh, that looks like that's gonna hurt, but all right, baby. You know, we down for each other. You know, a woman who loves a man, and man will buy a piece of junk land in the middle of the woods somewhere and say, you know what, we're gonna start our own kingdom right here in the middle of this piece of wood. I got a trailer that I had towed out here. We're gonna live in this trailer off the grid, off the land, no running water, no electricity. She loved that man, she'll be right there. Now, and I'm not saying to do that to a woman. You know, I'm not saying push people's limits like that. But again, when you establish something, man, and you got a woman who's really down for you, which of course is a rarity, but when you find one who's really down for you, um, she'll absorb herself into what your program is, as long as you have a program, man. But you know, of course, you want to be like a hunter, and you want to look at her background and look at, you know, how is she stable? You know, you got to ask some of those embarrassing questions. How many sexual partners have you had? When was the last time you had sex? How many children do you have? By how many men? You know, why did those relationships end? What are your children like? What do they do? What's your plans for your children? What's your relationships like with their father? You got to go through all those things that you probably don't want to ask. How many STDs did you have? I always ask that one. And then I ask this one: how many pregnancies have you had? I don't even ask how many children. How many pregnancies? You know, you ask those questions like that to give you an idea. But like I said, man, the key is you want to look at the culture. You know, you could give me a sister who came up under strict Islamic law, who knows nothing about Arisha or anything. I take that over most who would approach, because I know there's already going to be a lot of good stuff there. You know, there's gonna be a celebration of femininity already. You know, apostolic women, right? You know, a lot of these systems, they got little secret things. They got little secret things about them that breed good people. 7-day Adventist men, because 7-day Adventists are always preparing for the end times. So one of the things that a lot of times that's key in their religion, they camp out a lot, just like the Mormons. But the 7-day Adventists, they go camping and stuff a lot. They a lot of them are vegetarians. They have their own vegetarian food line, the 7-day Adventists, their own brand. You know, so as a man, you know, or as a woman, you might give it a 7-day Adventist man. You know, now the only problem, again, I think it's a little tricky as a woman, to be honest with you, because chances are you're going to absorb into his culture, and into his religious practices. You're going to convert in, and that's usually how it happens in relationships, and how it's happened in the past. You know, you're going to convert into, as a woman, into what that man is doing. And I know a lot of you sisters nowadays don't do that. I get those calls a lot. You know, well, I want to practice this, and he's still in the church. And you call me. Well, I wrote a book on it. Brother Byron just, you know, mentioned it in the chat. Solutions for dysfunctional families. Because yes, you are dysfunctional. Most of the time, you're not even a family. We use that term, but you're not even a family. Like, sometimes sisters have children with guys, and then they break up and they saying, we were a family. You weren't a family just because you had a kid with somebody. You know, you got to get out of some of that lazy thinking. Not just you sisters, but you guys too. You know, but like I said, you want to kind of be able to look around at different cultures and see which ones will work for you. You know, the culture is more important. I'm telling you, is more important than the religion, because the culture is going to determine how you're going to deal with each other, man, over what God you pray to. Because we could all say, okay, we're adherents and followers of Shango. But the way you perceive Shango may be completely different than the way I perceive Shango. So inherently, we have two different religions. However, what's the culture we're living? If we're living the same culture, it's not really going to matter that much. Our spiritual perspective is not going to matter that much if our culture is the same. I know it's kind of tricky. It's a tricky it's a tricky way to approach it. But men, you got a complicated job in front of you. That's all. That's all that means. Your job is a little complicated, man. But again, ultimately, stability will breed stability. And I know sometimes we fall in love with women and all that stuff, and because they're cute or whatever. You got to look at the stability of that individual. That's men and women alike. Forget all that other stuff. Sister Kia says Morocco is located on the southern Sahara Desert coast of Morocco, just above the Tropic of Cancer. Is one of the best locations in the world, according to the Morocco travel blog. Yeah, I spoke to you recently about those. That Tropic of Cancer. Brother Antonio says after observing different cultures before and found out that culture acts like an immune system for people. Lo says so because she has good culture, there wouldn't be a conflict of interest, beliefs, and ideas. Not really. That's a good question. Let me put it back out there again. Lo, the scholar says, based on what I was saying, so because she has a good culture, there wouldn't be a conflict of interest, beliefs, and ideas. Well, look at this, right? This is a much more complex conversation than y'all might realize. Some of you might realize. This is the stuff that y'all are tapping on is actually some deep stuff. Believe it or not. It's about survival and preservation, right? Now let's break it down to our primal instincts. Right? We want to live, we want to be able to eat, we want to have shelter over our home, over our heads, right? Now, some of us live within a culture where that's not the imperative. Let's think about it. Make it easy. African American culture. I'm considering myself African American, so I'm breaking up. All right, give me a second here. Give me a second. Give me a second. Give me a second. All right, I should be okay now. But like the example I was giving was, again, I'm answering Brother Lowe's question, which was, what was he saying? Essentially, so because she has good culture, there wouldn't be a conflict of interest and beliefs and ideas, right? Okay, so no, because again, we all should have at least a primal baseline culture of survival. Like for instance, when you go to Yoruba land, one of the big things amongst Nigerians, period, is family. That's big. Like, before they ask you your religion, they may ask you if you go to church, but no one really gonna stress your religion like that. They're gonna ask you about your family when they meet you. Are you married? Or if you're a certain age, they won't even ask you if you're married. They ask you how many children do you have. If you ain't got enough children, you can't even sit at the table. I'm keeping it real. Now, I know that you probably think I'm joking because I joke a lot. I'm not joking. You are 45, 50-year-old man, and you sit amongst, the movers and shakers, the elders, and, you get an opportunity to have a real conversation. You might be breaking the cola nut, or drinking some schnapps with them, or, you crack open some water and some coconut, and you're just talking, Baba Haru, how many children do you have? One. You say something like that, you're going to hear that out of somebody. Somebody, you might not know who did it, but you're going to hear meeting adjourned. Come back when you have more children. So yeah, man, like I'm saying, so family is huge in Nigeria. Like that's important, right? They want to see that. But ultimately, again, to answer your question, Brother Lowe, no, because if she has a baseline culture of of things that are healthy and humane for human survival and human preservation, and you have a baseline culture of things that are healthy for human preservation and survival, you're not going to have a problem together, because ultimately, all right, I know I'm getting reports that it's breaking up, but I think that was from before. I think I'm clear now. All right, so I think some of you have a delay. I couldn't figure out the word. I think there's a little bit of a delay on the line. All right, but so yeah, you want to look at the culture first, man. Now she may be, for instance, let's say, Brother Lowe, your culture is, you're all about just a man being a leader, a man being a guide to his family and being able to be clear-headed and lead and guide your family and protect your family and provide safe experiences, so forth and so on for your family. Right? Well, what religion is that? That's not really a religion. That's a culture. And we'll get to your religion later. And then you meet a woman who's like, is all about, getting up underneath a good man who's going to give her a good fertilizer for the eggs that's in her, and protect the children that she's going to produce and she's going to lead. Because you remember, again, if you look at that empire, king, prince, duke model, you put your woman in there. Even if you look at ancient China, you had emperors and you had the empress. The emperor represented heaven and the empress represented earth. And it was heaven that gave the divine information and guidance to earth, and earth acted it out. Same way when you look at the I Ching, if any of you study the I Ching divination system or the Book of Changes, right? So, and that same idea, there's a very primal and basic thing that we have to cover. Now, what I was saying before we started breaking up, as far as the sound, you look at African American culture, of course, which I said I don't consider myself to be, not even consider, I ain't African American. All right, just to be clear. All right, so if you look at African American culture, the basics of the culture have very little to do with self-preservation, or matter of fact, group preservation. There may be some survival root chakra mechanisms in there, but food, clothing, and shelter. I'm breaking up again already, or are you delayed, Brother Anwar? Hopefully, that's just a delay on your side. I think there might be a delay, Brother Anwar. But all right, I'll do my little trick again just in case. All right. Sounds clear to you. Okay, yeah, I think that was just a delay on Brother Anwar's side. So again, ultimately, I'm trying to remember my place where I was at. Again, if you look at African American culture, it's not based around food, clothing, and shelter. So now you're in African American culture. There's no food, clothing, and shelter imperative. But let's just say, for instance, you're in African American culture, but you are, I don't know, you're in the Akan system, right? So you're practicing a traditional system. You're in Akan, right? But still no food, culture, and food, clothing, culture imperative, because you consider yourself an Akan practitioner within African American society. Right? So, or African American culture. Now you meet a sister who actually is a Khan. She may be Fanti, or she may be Ashanti, because they're both a Khan. They just come on just different divisions of a Khan. But let's say if you meet a Fanti sister, right? She comes over, and she's living Fanti culture, right? She's an Akan living Fanti culture, okay, or Akan culture. But Fanti and Ashanti culture are different. So there's even distinctions there. So let me just say Akan culture, just for the sake of the discussion, to make it easier. So we'll take the larger umbrella culture of Akan culture. She has Akan culture. You have the same spirit. You're both dealing with the Abosom. Okay, so you both recognize the Abosom, and you're working with the Abosom and the Nanan and Sonomfo. So you're dealing with those particular energies and those particular paradigms. You both have, maybe you go to the same Akomfo that you fall under, and you're dealing with those sciences. However, your culture doesn't have a food, clothing, and shelter imperative. Her culture does. Because remember, you're dealing with African American culture. You're allegiant to the king, and to the president, and local politics, and all that other stuff. And she has a different kind of allegiance. It's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. But now let's say She's an Akan who comes over, but she's a Christian, which is probably most likely the case. She's a Christian. And she's practicing Akan culture as a Christian. So now, and let's say you're here as an African American, but you learn to practice Akan culture. There's going to be some very baseline, primal things that occur between men and women that you're going to be able to get with each other on. And I'm gonna tell you something again, as a man. Now, this is important for you men to understand. She's gonna absorb herself into your culture. You see, if I'm living a healthy culture and I'm a Muslim, and I meet a woman and she's a Christian, and she also has a clear-headed idea of what culture is supposed to be, you don't know, you don't understand. She's gonna convert to Islam. Why is she going to convert to Islam? Because she understands the primal relationship between men and women. And she knows that she can't be a Christian underneath some pastor somewhere. And she has a husband at home who's a Muslim. It's not going to work. It's going to bring destruction to the family. And because she's of a healthy culture, she's not going to do that. So it's important that you brothers, you men, make sure that you align yourself with a healthy culture and understand that your woman is going to absorb herself into your culture. Now, if she doesn't absorb herself into your culture and your customs and your practices, either she doesn't respect you or you're doing something wrong. Maybe you don't know to tell her that she needs to absorb herself into it. Because how can you build a dynasty? How can you trickle down your authority through her if she's not? Yeah, I think there's a huge delay. There's just a long delay because some of you are saying I'm clear. And I was like, that issue was like 5 minutes ago. There's just a little bit of delay, but we're cool. But with that idea, and some of you are not delayed, I noticed. I think like Justin, I think he's right on time, but the delay is varied. But my point that I'm saying is that the customs and the practices are key. I'm telling you, the customs and practices are key. Don't focus on the religion, especially as a man. She's that religion. Why? Like you got a woman who grows up in the Islamic State. Yeah, of course she's a Muslim. Most of the people here in America are Christians. Why? It's Christian state, so they say. Right? So, but ultimately, like I said, men build the civilization. Heterosexual men, I gotta reemphasize that. And everyone else absorbs themselves into that. So if a heterosexual man builds what he calls a Christian state, then everyone is going to absorb themselves into that, and they're going to be Christians. If a heterosexual man builds a Islamic state, everyone who's underneath that, absorbed in that, is going to convert to Islam. If a heterosexual man builds a traditional spiritualist state, everyone on that's going to absorb into that. You see? That's the key. Now, when you don't build that civilization, you don't have that state. Yeah, you might get with a woman. She's doing one thing, you're doing another thing. You two can't seem to get it together because you ain't got nothing. Because ultimately, sisters want structure. Why, sisters? You always going to get those knuckleheads out there who going to say, well, I want to do my own thing. Leave her alone. Let her go run off into the desert and go kill herself. Because we don't need that. I'm going to keep it real. We don't need that. And the same thing for these guys who have no direction, no customs, no practices, no culture. Let them run off. And that's what you mainly see in the conscious community. There's no customs or practices. There isn't. I wrote a marriage manual that I typically give to members of my family, and it was fueled off of that. The fact that there's no customs and practices for marriage in the quote unquote conscious community. And that was back in the days I wrote that, before YouTube and all of that, and like we really got to see some of the real tomfoolery on a global level in the conscious community. I was just seeing things locally that I wasn't really feeling with, talking to different men, and I would ask them about certain sisters. They say, oh yeah, I'm working on that. Or that's what really sparked it. And the elder said that about a sister. I said, y'all together? He said, oh, I'm working on that. Yeah, and then I heard another brother was like, yeah, I'm dealing with this sister. What do you mean dealing, working on? The heck is that? So you're dishonoring these women by even referring to them like that. Like, what is she to you? What is she now in the community? If you two are talking, or you two are together, you two are courting, is she still public property? Because that's what it really is. I know y'all don't like to hear stuff like that coming from me, but think about that for a second. It doesn't sound nice, I know, but think about it. And I said, nah, man, and I wrote a manual on it, on how to court. I never published it, and I don't think I ever will. It's something that just, some information is not for general, for general or public consumption, and that's one of them. Other things that I need to implement in there that weren't in there before. In fact, the courting outline and solutions for dysfunctional family relationships came from that. Even the idea of having a family mission statement that you always hear me talk about, that came from that book I wrote that I never published. So, like I said, in the conscious community, you don't have no customs and practice. How do we marry? How do we court? How do we dress? What should we wear? To be identified. I had this idea, which was another thing I had put in the manual. If you're a single person looking for a mate, I was like, we could wear like a certain bracelet. Could be a certain color or a certain material. You have a certain color for single women looking for a mate, or for attached women who are looking for other women to add on to their family. Monogamous men looking for a mate, monogamous or polygynous men looking for a mate, and you would have different colors that each one would wear. So that way, you wouldn't have that apprehension. Should I approach? Should I not approach? Is she available? Is she not available? And then she might have a bracelet that says I'm with someone. I'm in a polygynous relationship. So then you might have a sister say, oh, you're in a polygynous relationship. Are you looking to add on to your family? Because I really like the vibe of you and your husband, or I like your vibe. Boom, 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 boom. It'll make things a lot easier. Now, somebody might jack that idea now that I made it public. I don't care. Go ahead, take it. But because I never fully implemented it. I was trying to implement it with Sons of Sankofa, but I couldn't get the elders to stick with it. I even bought I might even still have some of them. I bought these beautiful copper bracelets, and I had different designs and stuff, and had the whole prototype laid out. This is how we're gonna do this. What we're gonna wear these every day, or whenever there's a cultural gathering, we'll wear these. And that will let know, and it'll make this whole mating process a lot easier. It take a lot of the guesswork out. So that's just an example. And I'm not saying everybody needs to do that, but your culture or your nation or your empire, your kingdom has to come along with some customs and practices. And when you have that, a woman will see that and say, okay, well, where do I stand? I'm supposed to stand over here. How do I greet you in adorning? What do you like to be called? I get that one a lot when I'm traveling. You want to be called Baba, Chief, which one? And I've learned out of wisdom to stop saying, oh, it doesn't matter. Just, mm-mm. I used to do that when I was younger because I didn't know any better. I didn't realize, number one, how big of a deal it was, but number two, what those sisters were really excited about. This brother has a culture. This brother has structure. I want to learn this structure. And you deny him of that when you don't do that. So, that's just something to think about. I know it's a huge answer, but like I said, this is much more complex than y'all might realize. If you could get some of this under your belt, you'd be doing so much better. It's about the customs and the practices. Christian, Muslim, Hebrew, 5%er, Rasta. It doesn't matter as much as you might think, because the truth is, if healthy customs and practices are instituted, I'm gonna keep it real. It's only with certain religions you're gonna fall into anyway. Some of the stuff that just doesn't make any sense, you're not gonna mess with anyway. If you have a healthy culture, that healthy culture is going to create a healthy mind, and at some point, that mind is going to question. You can say, "Wait a minute, what the heck is this?" This doesn't work. This doesn't make sense. This isn't about group dynamics or group survival or group preservation dynamics. What we're practicing here, I'm gonna get up out of this. You see, so that's why I'm telling you that the culture is key. So this all was sparked. I was speaking about Yoruba culture, Yoruba customs and practices that are existent regardless of religion. Learn that stuff first. Brother Lowe said, my uncle would tell me real men love order. So building the structure will bring order to your family and relationship. I see. Absolutely. If you don't have to, let me tell you something, man. If you ain't got the structure, you ain't got no family anyway. You just got a chick you knocked up and a bunch of children running around. You ain't got no family. There's certain things that have to be just like you. If you see a parent, whether it's a father or a mother, and they're not doing their job, you might look at them and say, that's not a real father. You're not a real father. You're not a real mother. You're just a sperm donor or a womb. I call them womb donor. You're just a womb donor because there's certain things that come along with that role, right? Well, there's certain things that come along with the family construct. So if you don't have certain structure, it's not a family. That's what I was speaking about on a recent show when someone was saying something about family, and I was like, yeah, but sometimes we take on very demonic or very harmful dynamics or harmful definitions of what we would consider a family to be, which creates more sickness in our people. Let's really look at what a family truly is and then build from that, as opposed to just grabbing the term out of the air and say anything can be your family. You and your dogs. If you love your dogs, that's your family. No, that's not. Maybe in a Western construct, but in my culture, I know people marry their dogs and their cats and all that stuff like that. I mean, hey, whatever floats your boat. But in my culture, we don't do that. You do that in your culture, we don't do that. So that can't necessarily, in our system, it wouldn't necessarily constitute a family. So you want to start from a healthier root. You want to grasp the root of divine power, but you want to grasp the root of the divine understanding of family. And like I said, man, customs and practices are key. How do we greet each other? What are we? What do we call each other? That's why you hear me say I knew. People ask, what's your culture? I knew. That's not an easy thing to always for people to hear. When you say something like that, like what the heck is that? What is that? you know so I'm just saying, man, there's different ideas that one can put forth, and and understand that your culture is engineered, man. As you go, you adapt, you learn to try different things. Like I said, I had that bracelet idea, and that was something I was trying. I may have done it. We may have had a couple hundred people that say, bracelets ain't working, because let's try something else. Let's try this. That I also wanted to do choosing ceremonies. I had a lot of ideas, but I wanted to do this once a year ceremony where literally women would pick mates, very similar to the Wadabi tribe, but where the women choose. But you would have a ceremony once a year, and basically the eligible men, not just any man who jumps in and say, yeah, I'm trying to, get some tang, some new strange, but eligible men who were approved by the elders is like, yeah, you're ready to marry, or ready to add on, even possibly to I don't know, it's funny, ready to add on to your family. Yeah, okay, cool, throw you in the pool. And then the same thing for the sisters. The females say, okay, yeah, she's ready, she's boom, 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 and then you let the sisters choose up. Makes it a whole lot simpler, right? The people have been screened. There's a community watching. So there's nothing happening, behind the scenes, and he's telling you one thing, and then I know dudes do that. I mean, let's keep it real, And I'm not simping or cupcaking right now, but there are some sinister brothers out there who will, sex is a hell of a drug. It will do a lot of different things. I mean, I've seen brothers in the mosque, man, get married. Literally, I've seen one brother get married like 4 times in the span of a year. And I said to him once, I was like, yo, what kind of iman you dealing with that's gonna keep marrying you to do? And what he was basically, he didn't marry 4 different wives that have 4 different wives. He was marrying women to have sex with him. Then after 2 months or so, he's done. He would divorce the sister, and go move to the next one. And I told him one day, I was like, yo, what we need to do? It was so funny because I was like, all the brothers was around. And he thought I was gonna he thought it was a different kind of statement I was gonna make. I was like, yo, this is what we need to do. We need to go, to the Holy Land, man, and bring back like a nice size stone, and to put it like, in the front of the mosque, man, like but a good sized stone, coming from the Holy Land. And then what we do, we'll start with you. We'll put your head on it, and then we'll chop your head off with a straight sword. And then that'll be an example for all the brothers who doing what you're doing right now. I said that in front of his imam and everybody else. It was a whole he thought I was gonna give him some type of compliment, but I was like, yeah, we need to chop your head off in front of everybody. And then I was like, yeah, and then what we'll do is like we'll put the head, like we'll put honey all in it, so the head will be preserved forever, because honey's a preservative. And then we'll just box it up, put it like in a clear box so everybody can see it. And then we'll put like a little card, like an index card next to it to say exactly what you did. You married 4 girls in 1 year just to have sex with them. So again, customs and practices, now you may not, that may not be your solution. That for me, I felt it was a viable solution, but everybody is different. I'm not telling you go around chopping people's heads off, but and not that I chopped his head off. I mean, what was going to do it? I was all them brothers up in there. They wasn't going to let nothing like that happen. But somebody had to say something at some point. I guess it took an outsider to have to say something. But yeah, man, the customs and the practices they overrule everything, man. I'm telling you, they overrule everything. So, especially for you brothers, as you are establishing these kingdoms and these empires that we're speaking about, that's where you want to begin. When you meet a sister, for instance, do you shake hands? I'll just give you some of my little stuff. Women who dealt with me, like one of the things I shared, no, you can't work for alien cultures. I'm not having that. You're not going to be another man's financial concubine. You can't shake the hands of alien men. They can't touch you. I don't play that. And that used to be always interesting, the different creative ways I watch women in my fold get out of shaking men's hands, and they would, just do different things. And I've seen men hold their hand out there like, I'm trying to shake your hand. And they like, sisters got her hand over her heart, like, and just bowing like, oh, thank you. No, no, don't touch my woman. Get the hell out. Especially if it was an alien man. You done touched our women enough. Enough is enough. You ain't touching this one. We used to do this thing. One time we did this walking down the street in Philly. It was funny, but we were walking down South Street. Remember, if you ever been to Philly, South Street is like a real jumping street, like a little, a lot of stores and stuff out there. And we used to walk. I used to have the sisters walk with their arms locked together. And one thing I always had is, and I'm still like that. Nobody walks between us. Go around. Nobody, especially, again, I'm gonna repeat, people of an alien culture, because metaphorically and symbolically, you're letting them come between us. So one time we coming down the street on South Street, and there was 4 of us in total, arm locked. And I was like, yo, let's see how far we can get down the street before this turns into a fight. And it was just a real, kind of funny scene. People were getting out of the way, probably like, what the heck is this? Is this a protest or something like that? But that was my thing, man. And sometimes you'll find, once you start doing stuff like that, you'll find that certain people will purposely like just cut in the middle of, like, you can almost see like, wow, this person intentionally tried to get in between here. Some people are more like, you'll notice it more. Some people more aggressive about it. And then you realize then, there was something to what Chief was saying. They really do that. They really do try to cut in between you and your woman, when you're walking down the street, and I've been known, I put that arm out, man. I'll knock you on your behind, man. No, go around. Or what are you doing? Why are you so close to, so just little things. Now, those, again, you may not take on those customs and practices as you're building, because, there's going to be certain things that maybe you're sensitive to as a man, or maybe even your empress is more sensitive to, and you may include those things as a part of of what you do, and maybe, what you eat, and or what you decide that this is what I'm going to feed my children, and so forth and so on, or how often we're going to eat, how often we're going to relax, and but you start to determine all that. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of different systems around the world that you can look at, and look at what works, and what doesn't work. Also, and I've mentioned this in Solutions for Dysfunctional Family Relationships, establish a family calendar early. Start off with the family calendar, the days that are important to you. It doesn't have to reflect your Roman holidays, but the days that it could be when a relative was born or a relative transition. It could be when you came into conscious. It could be when you got initiated, or you got your first reading, or whatever it is, but you establish that as your sacred calendar for your family, days off and everything. You put that, you put that, tell you, if you work in a job, brothers, because this shouldn't be an issue for a woman if you're, again, being observed into the culture, and you say, yo, I need these days off, that days off. F of vacation, because you don't need a vacation that much anyway if your home is paradise. If you got a happy woman in your house, man, you don't need a vacation that much. You're not going to need to escape as much as you think you do. You'd be happy to come home, man. So the thing is, you establish those holy days from the rip. And it could be figures in your life. It might be athletes. Like maybe you're a Michael Jordan fanatic or LeBron James fanatic, and it's like, I want to celebrate the day LeBron James was born. I don't know. Again, and I'm just using those examples because it's just that mutable. You see, you have that free will right as you're establishing your dominion. And again, a sister may come into that, and she might be like, this brother actually takes off for LeBron James' birthday. But hey, that's what my baby does. So, hey, it's a day off. Why not? It's a day off. So that's what I'm saying, man. You want to look at it from that perspective. When you're building, man, just establish a calendar. Look at your customs. Look at your practices, and they don't all have to. Just because you may deal with Ifa and Orisha doesn't mean that you have to totally live Nigerian culture to the key, but you should understand it. You should understand it. You should know that, and it's complex. There's a lot of things, but you should know the baseline of those practices, man. But understand that if you live in the UK, or you live in the diaspora, you live in the Caribbean, your situation may be a little bit different. So me saying something like, well, when me and my sisters walk down the street, we arm locked. If I'm back home, that may not be that big of a deal. Or even another man touching my woman, it may not be that big of a deal back home, because the relationships, you're not in an over-sexualized environment. You might, because that's one of the things that do. A lot of you sisters have noticed that have met me in person. I don't really hug like that, because it could be a sexual thing, especially you got some of you sisters, man, got some 36 double Fs sitting on top of your chest. Oh, give me a hug, Chief. Sure thing. It could turn, and then your husband's right there. Yeah, I am feeling your wife's breast. Thank you. That's not cool. That's how accidents happen. So sometimes, and again, that's just for me. You may look at that and say, oh, that's no big deal. But think about it before you dismiss it. Think about all the things that we do in terms of customs and practices in this country, or in the diaspora, or in the Anglosphere, which is really the better term to utilize within the Anglosphere, that actually feed into our sicknesses, man. Some of the very small things that you might not even think about that feed into our sicknesses. For instance, the other day I had to drop one of my youth off. He was doing this school project with this young lady. This young lady is like all over. I mean, she's a nice looking little sister, half Dominican, half Cuban, little thick, little young sister, So, he was like, yeah, they're working on this project together. And, so he's getting ready to go over, and she's like crazy in love with him, and, my youth are polygynous. So they practice polygyny. All right. So, early on, in this situation, I was like, yo, you make sure you let her know that you're talking to other young ladies, man. Don't, I know she's cute and everything and you want to smash, but you let her know what's what. So, I coached him through that one night. We were texting back and forth, and he let her know, like, and of course she got upset, and said, she called him an idiot and all of this and stuff. And then she came back the next day and was like, text me tonight. And I said, see, she's cool with it, because you were honest. So he's going over there to work on this project, and he's like, Baba, can I get a condom? And I'm like, we need a condom. You're supposed to be working on homework. He was like, yeah, but that's only going to take like an hour. And, her father's out of town. And da 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 da. And he said we could sleep over. He said I could sleep. I was like, wait a minute. What kind of idiot is he? He said you could sleep over and he's out of town. And she's like, yeah, but her stepmother's there. I was like, yo, nah, you ain't sleeping in that man's house. We don't do that, and I was like, the condom thing. So to fast forward to the actual real issue. So we get ready to leave. He's got like on a t-shirt and some like gym shorts. And I'm saying, what is this? What are you wearing? I was like, why you didn't, obviously the girl likes you. You like her a little bit. Why you didn't get fresh? And he was like, oh, I'm just, I'm doing me. And I said, but what kind of impression are you putting in this young lady's mind? I said, you can't even put some nice jeans on and, and like at least one of your better t-shirts. You just going to throw on like basically what you wear in the gym. So again, about customs and practices. So I'm saying, what kind of precedent are you setting for her at this point, and how she should regard you and how you should regard her? What are you telling her that you really think about her? When you go to school, you dress better than you dressed right now. And he was like, yeah, you're right. So he went back inside and changed his clothes. Now, again, that's a subtle thing. So customs and practices, right? So yeah, when you're around that young lady, you present yourself in your best way. It's not appropriate you ain't gonna be sleeping over our house, and you definitely not gonna be banging her out with her mother or her stepmother, whatever, right upstairs. And then he even said, he came back, he was like, yo, Baba, her stepmother had the biggest behind, and she had on these little tiny shorts, and then she changed into some tights. And then so that was another conversation. Well, what does that tell you about their family culture? I said, she's walking around like that in front of you and this and that. What does that tell you about the young lady? And he came to some revelations. I mean, he's still like, I'm still gonna hit it. But I do understand. So, again, when you have your own culture and practices, you'd be surprised how empowering it is and how it allows you to be able to see clarity in what other people are doing in that sense. I'm gonna go into the chat room real quick before we head out. So Dark Angel says, for someone trying to find their way, what are some of the basics? Well, I don't know what find your way means. Need clarification. Lotus Scholar says, being in Afghanistan, an interpreter broke down why his wife wore a burqa, and he was like, that's his wife, and you're not going to see my wife like that. True talk. Now let me give you some background on that. Now look at the opposite of how relationships were in Victorian times. After a man married a woman, more so in a royal household, after he married a woman, he was supposed to, and in Grecian times as well, especially in Grecian times, he was never supposed to see her naked again. How ass backwards. I mean, I don't want to talk about somebody's culture, but them Greeks, man, how backwards is that? So you get with the woman, you see her, at least her shoulders and stuff. The wedding night, you see her disrobed. After that night that you consummate, you never see her naked again. That was their culture. That's why now a lot of times, when you look at some of the clothes that people wear to bed and stuff, it comes from that culture, all covered up and everything like that. Nudity becomes something that we're ashamed of. That comes from that culture. And that's why, of course, then the guy would go to the bathhouse and, snatch up a prostitute or whatever who didn't mind showing the goodies. Um, yeah, thanks for that, Justin. Justin Green says you can get them print. He's talking about the calendars, nice calendars, like little desk calendars. Get a template from a website, edit it via PDF. Spend between $65 to $120. PSprint.com. Yeah, you can print out your own calendars. It's worth it, man. It's worth it. You can put your own images on it, or even images of your family. It'll be $65 well spent. Don't be cheap, because I know, Justin, you just like, yeah, just $65, but I know how cheap people are. Anything over $7, I gotta save up for that. Meanwhile, they take their whole family to McDonald's and spend $80. But anyway, so Lotus Scholar says, meanwhile, the white soldier talking to him was like, he likes to show off his girl like it's a Ferrari. I was like, and that's why your girl will get took if you don't have no game, right? Or his girl is back home in the States getting banged out, at the Ferrari dealership. Well, no, I don't want to say it. Everybody's culture is different. So people show their girl off. It depends on if it depends on the culture between you and your woman. You know what I mean? If maybe her job requires her to show some skin. She may be a model, or she may be a dancer, and the way she goes out looking every day is going to attract more people to her business. Yeah, it's all different. Okay. Any questions here? So Dietrich says, I used to get called funny for being particular about stuff like that. Now it feels good to know that it's normal to operate by your own standards. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. You better set the standards, man. You have to become the emperor in your own home kingdom, man, or somebody else will. I always tell you, if you don't choose your culture, it'll be chosen for you. So Byron answered Sister Dark Angel by saying, I'd say developing and maintaining a good structure and habits. That's the question. Where do you start on the basics, I guess? And I Am Divine said, getting to know your Ori and your purpose is important. Lotus Scholar, ooh, here's an idea. The Orisha that rules over your family, their days should be special for your family. Yeah, that's how it's done back home. Every family has a patron Orisha. Yeah, so that's normal stuff. Thanks, I Am Divine. Do I have to get a reading to find out? There's some stuff before, Dark Angel. There's some stuff you do, before that. I would say if you want to know the basics, because you didn't clarify that question, start with these shows. Go back to the first show where I'm talking about Ori. I'm talking about the gatekeepers. The basics are sitting right in front of you. All right. I've already given you the basics. I've given you one-on-one on these shows. Buy the book, Grasping the Root of Divine Power, Shrine and Altar. They're already there. So the basics are right in front of you already. I've given you a lot of first steps. In fact, if you notice, this show was a basic show. All I spoke about was terms. I didn't even get into the more complex concepts of family building. Most shows, I don't get into the more complex things. And you notice how people are still like, wow, great show. Because most of the time we skip over the basics. So you just talk about the basics and people are like, I don't remember ever hearing this. Yeah, because we speed too much. So the basics they're all in these segments: enlightenment, transformation. You got over 400 to 500 shows of basics. So you got a lot of free stuff already, and then the books will give you your culture, your familial solutions for functional families, familial basics, shrine and altar. When you're ready to start working with the elements and build your own shrine, grasping the divine power to get your basic understanding just of how energy and forces move. I mean, what else is there? Even if you want the basics of Monday, of money, you got Mastermind Monday. It's all here. We've covered so many basic bases. It's ridiculous at this point. So it's right here. But yeah, so it's just some ideas I'm giving. Like I said, and I'm not giving these ideas as to become your gold standard. You may all establish different kingdoms. Anu, in that sense, is the empire. And within that empire, there's multiple kingdoms. Like I said, if I went to Brother Byron's house right now, I would refer to him as Baba in front of his children. That's his kingdom. It doesn't matter what you are in your land. You go to another person's kingdom, you have to bow down to their rules and customs. If I go to take my shoes off and he says, no, chief, we don't take our shoes off in the house. That's forbidden. I keep my shoes on, even though I always take my shoes off when I come into people's homes. You see, so establishing your own standards in that sense doesn't mean that you necessarily have to segregate yourself from your greater community, but it just means that you're determining what the character that you're in the mind that you're creating in your kin, in your family. So if I want a certain mind, like for instance, a lot of times, I'm gonna say this and then we're gonna leave soon, but a lot of times women have issue. Like some of the questions were asked earlier about, finding women and stuff like that. A lot of times there's a shortage of good women, especially here in the States, because no one protected their sexual or emotional purity. They weren't protected in that way, man. So Byron says you get some pounded yam and palm oil stew too, Chief. Give thanks. Give thanks. But a lot of times the sexual purity of women is not protected. I mean, they're just not sometimes protected in general. So like when you hear me say things like, some of the things that I may be saying in terms of how women are regarded or treated, it may seem harsh to you. Like, wow, man, you can't touch. If he's just because he's not in your family or in your culture, you can't even shake hands with him and this and that and that. And women have to work within your family and they can't go. And then it may seem much for you, but a lot of times it's because we haven't protected them. So because we haven't protected them, like I've said in other shows, we allow them to make decisions that they should not be making. At ages they shouldn't be making some important decisions. Like my daughters cannot choose who they're going to have sex with first. I'm not having it. No, you will not make that choice. You can't make that choice. Not yet. You don't have the emotional and mental development to make that choice. And you got some young girls that make that choice at 13, 14 years old. They barely even know how to wash their vaginas properly. And they're over choosing who they're gonna put inside of it. They can barely feed themselves. How are they going to feed something that comes out of them and take care of something that comes out of them? You see, so a lot of times those things happen because they're not watched over. Like Jay-Z said in the song Renegade, they're not looked over. So it's the same thing, man. We're not protecting a lot of times these sisters, and then they grow up and they become monsters, or the dragon is unleashed in them. That's really what it is. That's a whole nother show. But their dragon is unleashed. So you get more Lilith than Eve. And now we can't deal with them, but it's because no one looked over them. And looking over them means that you're going to have to do some things that I'm telling you that may be antithetical to what this society or Anglosphere society tells you, just like when I said yesterday, boys need to be pushed out early, man. 15, 16 years old, man. Build them a shed in the back of the house. That's where you live. Well, my house don't look as good as yours, Baba. Yeah. Right. So go. So you buy your land and get one as good as mine. 15, 16 years old, because just in a few short years, they'll be out there in the world having to compete. The Anglosphere is a highly competitive environment. But so you may do that with your boys. Look, man, you're gonna have to learn how to pitch a roof. How to pitch it properly. You're going to have to learn how to put up your walls, how to frame things, how to frame a house, foundation. You may not put a foundation in your yard. You may put on cinder blocks, but either way, you teach them those skills now. Here, man, put your little garden in the back, man. You want to smoke herb, you grow it. I'm not telling you young people should grow herb. I'm just saying, but but the daughters be the exact opposite. No, Baba got you. You protect it. Oh, you got to go somewhere? Baba drive you. Who's walking it? Can your brother walk you? Who before you walk out of this house? No, you got to protect them. And in doing that, what you end up doing is protecting and holding their purity. So now they have a greater sense of value. They haven't been washed over and beat all up by the world, by that guy at 13 or 14. It's 13, 14, she's sleeping with a 17-year-old, 18-year-old, maybe a 20-year-old. And once that happens, it creates a domino effect. Now she's 19 and has no sense of self-worth in a first year of college or second year. No sense of self-worth, and she ain't even 20 yet. because of one reason. You didn't look over her. She wasn't washed over. Design's not defined says my father drove me everywhere and I hated it. Yeah, but you know it was good for you. You know it was. You know, you don't look over, man, because you know women have. Remember, they're fluid. They don't have a natural sense of decency. I know people don't get offended by that one, but it's true. You let your little girl go in the store and say, "Go pick out something to wear." What's she gonna come back with? A mini skirt. If once she starts growing breasts, she wants to show them. That's the feminine principle. And I mean, of course, we men, we enjoy that, or males, we enjoy that, but there's a time for that. When you're in a society where you're not safe, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, it's not the time for that. It's not the time or place. You'll have your opportunity to be that sexy woman and all of that, you know, when you're in under the covering of a man who's also keeping you as safe or more safe than what your father is. You want to understand this concept? Check out this movie called No Blade of Grass. It's an old movie. I love it though. One of the best SHTF, which is when, you know, stuff hits the fan, movies that you can find. It's an old one, and the you know, it's like from the 70s, so the effects and stuff are pretty bad, but the concepts that they covered in that movie were great. And it, you know, long story short, there's a scene in the movie where there's this guy that's, you know, basically there's this virus breakout in London, and there's his family. He kind of got word of it before it happened. This guy, he takes his family, he goes to his brother's farm where they're trying to get there. They're fighting their way through the city and then through the country. They link up with another guy because they went to try to rob a gun store. They needed some guns. A guy who worked in the store, the gun owner was like, "I'm not giving you the guns," and he gets the drop on him and he goes to call the police. So while he's trying to call the police, a guy who works in the store shoots the owner and is like, "No, I believe you. I'm gonna go with you." But this guy is a little off. He's a little crazy, but he's like a perfect shot. He's an excellent shot. So he's like the warrior of the group, but he's a little off. Long story short, he starts liking the father's daughter. And the father's daughter already had a boyfriend that was traveling with them, but the boyfriend didn't really have any skills. So at one point, the guy, the crazy guy with the gun was like, "Yo, because he was holding up, he was walking with them, but he was walking behind the group. He was like, you know, I don't remember her name. Let's just say Nancy. He was like, I think I want Nancy to walk with me. So the boyfriend was like, the hell you will. What are you talking about? And then he was like, I think she needs to be with me. And the daughter was like, no, you know what? It's okay. It's okay. And everybody was looking at her like she was crazy. And she was like, she tells the father, I just kind of feel safe with him. And the father was like, well, listen, he was, because the mother was all worried. And the father tells the mother, well, he's the best shot we have. You know, he's not going to let anything happen to her. And, you know, I know it's kind of rotten, but this makes the most sense. You see, now that's some hardcore stuff. I know if you got to watch it, but you got to really put your mind in a certain place to understand it, what was happening there and what I'm saying. That's some hardcore stuff right there, man. You know, a lot of times we're not looking over them like that. And then when we give our daughters away, we're not really inspecting who we're giving them to. So they go out unprotected. A woman unprotected is going to turn into a pseudo man. She's going to get some real hard, horrible experiences in life that are going to harden her to the point that she's no longer even viable in her natural womanly state. That's just how it goes, man. You know, so customs and practices, and your customs and practices will design and determine what it is that you want your family to represent and what you want your dynasty to be, and ultimately what's good for the empire. You see, and that may mean that, again, you may do things that this society or the Anglosphere may look on and say is oppressive or is crazy. Oh, you had your sons, you know, live outside, and yeah, because you're telling me my sons are 14 or 15, you're telling me just in a few years, you'll put a assault rifle in their hand and go teach them how to kill people. The least I could do is teach them how to build their own house or budget their money for their own food. This the least I could do, right? But I guess that would be considered abuse. All right. So we're gonna head out. All right. Brother Dietrich says before we go, a good way to see what Orisha governs or walks with your family is knowing what they did and how they act. It gives a clue of what Orisha walks with you, your family currently and in the past. Mm, mm, mm. All right. Mm. Work on that. I want you to work on that a little bit, Brother Teacher. I want you to do some research on that one. All right. On how we do it back home. All right. I want you to embellish and cultivate that perspective a little bit. I think you got more that you can cultivate. There's more that you can scratch on that one. You know, get the rooster out and scratch on that one. All right. But all right, everyone, we'll be back. What's today? Tuesday, Wednesday. Tomorrow's a late night show. We'll be back tomorrow night at 9 p.m. And I trust and will that everyone got a lot out of today's segment and enjoyed it. And appreciate you as well, brother Marvin. You know, thanks for always coming through. You know, I see certain faces I kind of get used to a little bit, you know. So yeah, man, give thanks coming through. All right. But got more things to do today. I spent much longer with you than I intended. Just give you a heads up. At some point, I'm probably going to bring these sessions down to 30 minutes. All right. I just haven't done it as of yet. Because like I said, when I do these sessions, it's usually the only time I kind of sit down during the day. So I use it as my like my break, you know. But all right, I'll catch you all tomorrow. And those of you like Designs Not Divine, Define, who didn't check everything, you know, go back and definitely you know, check them out, man. Listen to them. You know, what we talked about early in the show, because we dealt with the ideas of kings, emperors, gods, dukes, princes, and princesses, empresses. You know, we covered a little bit of that. We covered Yoruba customs and a whole lot of other things, man. You know, there's so many different layers to this thing, you'd be surprised. I got about 6 books that I've written that I've never even published. So many different layers. You know, so many different things to still talk about. You know, I only did one show on solar power. And I spent years teaching alternative building. You know, I have only done one show. So there's so much more still to dig into, man. Geothermal heat, you know, straw bale building, earth bag building, solar power, you know, cob building, you know, hydroelectric power. There's a lot, man. We got a lot. We got a lot of ground to cover. So, you know, we'll cover more ground if everyone plays their position. You know, the men do what they're supposed to do, sisters do what they're supposed to do, children would do what they're supposed to do. And each family represents something different. We can cover a lot more ground. I got a lot to give you all, but I just need to see a little bit more organization and a little bit more get up and go. And I need to see more families. Need to see more families. And there's some single women. I'm out. So I'm not going to out any names, but I'm just going to say, for any of you scrolling through that chat window, there's a good amount of single women in there. All right. And there's some single guys in there too. I know this for a fact. All right. I'm not going to out anybody yet. All right, everyone. I'll see you all tomorrow. Peace.